So I grew up in Namibia, and I've got a very good friend, let's call him Werner. He shared with me this story, that he took his wife and his kids up to Namibia. He had two little boys, and they flew up to Swakopmund, and they had a fantastic holiday. And one day they took a sedan, they rented a sedan, and they drove with the sedan to Sossusvlei. So it's a gravel road, it's beautiful, it's big dunes, and people that's been there will know. And he says that they are so excited about the nature, and they stop and they have coffee and they share how beautiful it is. And then suddenly, as they drive, he gets a flat tire. But it's not a problem. He stops and he changes the tire, and they continue driving. And he says 20-30 minutes later, he gets another flat tire. But now he's got a problem. He hasn't got another spare wheel, and he's in the middle of nowhere. And he realizes with a shock that he's got two more problems. He hasn't got water, and he hasn't got shade. There's nothing there, there's no shade. And he thinks to himself, but it's going to just be a while, and then the car will pass, and then we're going to be fine. But he says after an hour, there's no cars passing. 2 hours, 3 hours. Eventually they crawl underneath the car and they lie in that shade, and they cry and they are very scared. And he looks on the horizon and he sees there's something coming. And he sees it's a donkey cart. And it's a farmer on a donkey cart, and it's like a cowboy. He's got a beard and he's got a pipe in his mouth and he's got a hat on, and he stops. And they get onto the donkey cart and they continue driving, continue on their route. And Werner is so glad that this guy has just saved his life, and he wanted to start a conversation with him. But he says to me that the farmer is not a very talkative guy. He just puffs his pipe. He just sits on his donkey cart and he just puffs his pipe. Werner says that the most horrendous 3 hours on that donkey cart, because all that he could get out of this guy was that he's a farmer, that he farms with Dorpers, which is a specific kind of sheep, and that he's got 17 Dorpers, 17, and that he doesn't want more Dorpers. That's what he managed to get out of this guy for 3 hours. Werner says they eventually get to this guy's house, and they phone people to come and pick him up, and he flies back to South Africa, and he sits on his porch and he thinks about this whole story. And he realizes on his stoop that he is on the 17th floor of his organization. And it's one of those kind of organizations that the more senior you are, the higher you go up in the building. And he's on the 17th floor, and on the 18th floor is where the exco sits. And he's been on the 17th floor for a few years now. And the irony is that he's just met this guy in the middle of nowhere, in the desert, who's got 17 Dorper sheep, and he's content with the 17 sheep. And he calls it the lesson of the 17 Dorpers. And I thought about the story. It's an interesting story, because Werner said to me, there was something that this guy had that he didn't have. This guy in the donkey cart had a peace and a contentment that Werner didn't have. After reflection on his stoop, Werner realized that this guy's actually much richer than what Werner is. So why am I telling you this story? I want to read something to you, because I think there's a fundamental lesson that this Namibian farmer has got for all of us as leaders. It's from a play called After the Fall, and it was written by Arthur Miller. And Arthur Miller was married to Marilyn Monroe, and he wrote this play after she committed suicide. And one of the healthier characters, can we say, in the play says the following: I tried to die near the end of the war. And the same dream returned to me each night until I dared not go to sleep. And I grew ill. And I dreamt that I had a child. And even in my dream, I felt that the child was my life. And it was an idiot. And I ran away from it. But it always kept climbing into my lap and clutching at my clothes until I thought, if I could kiss it, whatever was in it that was my own, perhaps I could sleep again. And I bent to its broken face, and it was horrible. But I kissed it. And I think, Quentin, one must finally take one's life into one's own arms and kiss it. And in there lies the lesson. I think that Namibian farmer hugged his life and he kissed it. And because he did that, it brought with it a contentment and a peace that Werner admired. I find a lot of people, let's call it, stuck in the tyranny of the 18th floor. And very few leaders happy and content and peaceful with where they are. And I think if we as leaders can learn this lesson from the Namibian farmer, we will be able to provide much better leadership to the people that follow us.